What unfolded on the Senate floor was nothing short of seismic. Senator Ron Wyden, one of the rare lawmakers unafraid to confront the tangled financial and political empire linked to Jeffrey Epstein, rose with urgency. His warning was clear and chilling. America is still being denied the truth it deserves.
Mr. President, I yield to my colleague, Senator Wyden.
President,
I recognize the senator
we've
from
been
Oregon.
Looking at this for well over 3 years now, and what I'd like to do, my colleagues, Senator Merkley, all of my colleagues making important points, wanted to just take stock of where things stand. The Trump administration came in promising radical transparency on Jeffrey Epstein. Now, the fact is the Epstein files are being suppressed, and the administration is obstructing oversight from the Congress. The President's story about his relationship with Epstein changes by the day, and that's true of his administration as well. His personal lawyer went to talk to Ms. Maxwell, and who knows what was said in that conversation. What we do know is Maxwell has been moved, Epstein's partner in crime, to a minimum security prison without giving any good reason as to why a child sex trafficker deserves that additional comfort. House Republicans seem no longer interested in having Maxwell testify. Yesterday, it was reported that a member of Donald Trump's inner circle gave a high-paying job to another close Epstein associate, a man named Mr. Indike. That sounds, Mr. President, about as bizarre and wrong as you can get. My colleagues and I believe it's a big mistake for the Senate to go out of session without making real progress on real transparency on the Epstein issue. There are a number of ways you can do that. So let me say a little bit about our investigation, which began 3.5 years ago, Mr. President. So it's been looked at by Democrats and Republicans. From the outset, it's been built on the fact that you've got to follow the money to be at the core of this global sex trafficking operation, which, on the basis of what we have seen, has been funded lavishly. We began by examining the financial ties between Mr. Epstein and a Wall Street titan named Leon Black. We found that Black paid Epstein $170 million over just a couple of years. He said it was, quote, for tax and estate planning. The central claim, though, was what's noteworthy, Mr. President. The claim was that Mr. Epstein was a financial wizard, some superstar in terms of looking at taxes and estates, and he could perform accounting miracles. It appears this kind of work for Black and others was one of Mr. Epstein's biggest sources of income. Now here's the catch. Epstein wasn't an accountant or a tax attorney at all. And Leon Black, who's extraordinarily well off, already employed the best tax advisors in the business. He didn't need Mr. Epstein to handle his money. Black's lawyers even told our investigators, and let me just keep it brief, that Epstein's work wasn't very impressive. He made mistakes and his work needed to be double-checked by people who were actually tax experts. So Mr. Black was paying Mr. Epstein more than double the income of the average Fortune 500 CEO. And Mr. Black wasn't the only one paying Mr. Epstein top dollar for this so-called financial advice. That's where we've got to go to follow the money. Last year, my investigators went to the Treasury Department and reviewed thousands of bank documents related to Mr. Epstein's financing. We've spoken at length about those documents here on the Senate floor. It's a whole set of Epstein files in the possession of the Treasury Department, above and beyond the files in the possession of the Department of Justice. So that's a key point, Mr. President. You've got to look, if you're going to follow the money, at the Treasury Department, not just at the Department of Justice. We've been trying to get those documents. The Trump administration's been blocking us. We've demanded answers from the new head of the IRS about why its criminal investigators didn't look into Epstein's work for Leon Black or whether they did any investigation of Epstein at all. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars paid by ultra-wealthy individuals to a known sex trafficker for the purpose of dodging billions in taxes. It is unthinkable that those transactions were never audited or investigated. A deep dive on this, starting with the IRS criminal investigations operation, could have blown the lid off Epstein's cover story about being a financial genius quite some time ago. It could have helped uncover the financing behind these horrific crimes. One last point in terms of an update. There are all kinds of pundits out there chattering about whether this is the right political issue to focus on. My message is blunt, Mr. President. This is not about politics. This is not about Democrats and Republicans. So I just want to make it clear this is about whether there's going to be justice for the victims of a notorious sex trafficker who did not abuse these women and girls alone. This is about whether there's going to be accountability for the people who enabled and participated in Epstein's crimes. The question really is, as I close, who is the government looking out for? The rich and powerful, even those who do horrible things, or the powerless, the victims of abuse who've been neglected for too long? Donald Trump wants this to go away without any accountability. And for him, that might be about self-preservation. But it's clear the Trump administration, based on our detailed work, doesn't want to do the right thing here. I'm 3.5 years into my investigation of one aspect of the Epstein story because there ought to be accountability and justice for the victims. So I am here to bring my colleagues up to date on our investigation. There will be more this summer, particularly about the Treasury Department, which is sitting on thousands and thousands of Epstein documents of its own, and they shouldn't be allowed to skate on this. We are going to keep investigating. We're going to keep the pressure on, because this is not about blue, it's not about red, it's about doing the right thing and making sure something like this doesn't happen again. Senator Merkley and my colleagues are doing the right thing today, and I want it understood as somebody who's led this investigation for more than 3.5 years, I support them strongly, and I yield the floor.
What unfolded on the Senate floor was not routine politics. It was an eruption. Senator Ron Wyden, one of the few lawmakers unafraid to confront the financial and political machinery surrounding Jeffrey Epstein, stood before Congress and issued a warning that reverberated through the chamber. America is still being denied the truth. For more than 3 years, Wyden and a small bipartisan group of lawmakers have been investigating how Epstein's vast fortune and the powerful people who paid him helped sustain a global network of exploitation and abuse. The work has been slow, obstructed at nearly every turn. According to Wyden, the Trump administration not only failed to fulfill its promise of radical transparency, it also actively suppressed oversight, withholding key financial files and protecting individuals in Epstein's orbit. When Donald Trump took office, his administration pledged to expose the full story of Epstein, a case that had already eroded public confidence in justice and accountability. But, as Wyden told the Senate this week, those promises collapsed almost immediately. Instead of cooperation, Congress ran into a wall of secrecy. Wyden's message was plain, forceful, and deeply unsettling. The Epstein files are being suppressed, and both the Treasury Department and the Department of Justice are stonewalling oversight. At the center of the controversy lies the money. Hundreds of millions of dollars moving between Epstein and some of the most powerful figures in finance. Wyden's investigation revealed stunning transactions, none more shocking than the case of billionaire Leon Black, who allegedly paid Epstein $170 million for what was described as tax and estate planning. But Epstein was no tax attorney. He wasn't a certified accountant, and Leon Black already employed some of the most elite financial advisors in the world. Why then pay a convicted sex offender an amount that rivals the yearly compensation of multiple Fortune 500 CEOs for services that even Black's own lawyers called not very impressive? Wyden's answer was simple: follow the money. Because behind those transactions, he warned, may lie the financial infrastructure that shielded one of the most disturbing criminal networks of our time. This, he said, was a cover-up hiding in plain sight. Wyden's team went directly to the Treasury Department. There, they reviewed thousands of banking records linked to Epstein's operations. What they found was alarming. Entire sets of Epstein-related financial documents existing outside the Department of Justice's purview, quietly stored in Treasury archives. These records, according to Wyden, could reveal how money from billionaires and corporate entities flowed into Epstein's accounts, and how those transactions may have been used to evade taxes, launder money, or even fund criminal acts. But when Wyden and his investigators requested full access, the Trump administration refused again and again. Wyden also called out the IRS's Criminal Investigations Division, asking why, after years of suspicious transfers and credible evidence of trafficking, there had never been a serious audit or criminal probe into Epstein's finances. It is unthinkable, Wyden told the Senate, that these transactions were never investigated. He's right, because this isn't just about one man's crimes. It's about whether America's justice system is capable of holding the ultra-wealthy accountable when their crimes are dressed up as business. Wyden didn't stop there. He condemned the political forces that have tried to bury the investigation. He reminded his colleagues that this began as a bipartisan effort, but in recent years, House Republicans have walked away, even refusing to compel Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's longtime associate, to testify before Congress. Meanwhile, Wyden said, the Trump White House blurred the lines between friendship and complicity. He cited reports that Trump's personal lawyer met privately with Maxwell. Soon afterward, Maxwell was transferred to a minimum security facility, a baffling decision for a convicted sex trafficker. And then, something stranger, someone in Trump's inner circle allegedly secured a high-paying job for another Epstein associate. Wyden called it bizarre and wrong, but in truth it points to something even darker, a culture of impunity, where proximity to power shields even the most disgraced figures from accountability. Justice for the victims, or protection for the powerful. Wyden made clear which side Washington has chosen too often. At the emotional center of Wyden's speech was a moral question that cuts through the noise. Who is the government really protecting? Is it the wealthy and well-connected, even those linked to horrific crimes, or the survivors who were abused, silenced, and forgotten? Wyden's voice carried both anger and exhaustion as he described 3.5 years of obstruction and indifference. Yet beneath that fatigue was something else, resolve. Because for him, this fight isn't about partisanship or headlines. It's about restoring a fundamental American promise that no one, not billionaires, not presidents, not the friends of Jeffrey Epstein, is above the law. This is not about Democrats or Republicans, Wyden said. It's about whether there will ever be justice for the victims of a notorious sex trafficker who did not act alone. That statement landed like a hammer blow, because the Epstein case is not just a scandal, it's a mirror reflecting how deeply money and influence distort justice in America. Wyden ended his remarks with a warning. The investigation is far from over. He vowed to keep pressing the Treasury Department, which he says is sitting on thousands of Epstein-related documents, and promised not to let the issue fade from public view. The danger, Wyden warned, is not only in what Epstein did, but in what our institutions allowed to happen and what they are still hiding. When the Trump administration blocked oversight, Wyden argued, it didn't just protect Epstein's enablers, it eroded public trust. It told victims that money matters more than justice. And it sent a message that transparency is optional, when it should be the cornerstone of democracy. That's why Wyden's speech matters. It isn't just another round of political finger-pointing, it's a test of whether the US government still has the courage to investigate itself. Because if we can't demand full transparency about a man who trafficked minors for the world's elite, then what kind of justice system do we really have? At its heart, Wyden's warning is about more than one case. It's about the survival of accountability in a democracy that too often bends toward power. If federal agencies can hide critical financial records about one of the worst criminal conspiracies in modern history, what else can they bury? What other crimes hidden behind corporate veneers and political alliances go unseen? This is where oversight matters. This is where journalism matters. And this is where public pressure matters most. Because the Epstein case isn't just about the past, it's about the future of public trust. It's about whether Americans still believe that the rule of law applies to everyone, or whether wealth has permanently rewritten the rules. Wyden's message was simple but devastating. Do the right thing, not for politics, not for prestige, but for the victims, and for the integrity of a nation that claims no one is above the law. Truth, Wyden said, must come before power, because once that order is reversed, justice ceases to mean anything at all.